Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Mindful Matters. As you have probably undoubtedly noticed, I am by myself right now. My awesome co-host Liz is having a bad mental health week, so I could have waited until next week, but I wanted to give my shot at doing this by myself because I want to be consistent, and if I'm able to do it, why not just do it? I have the materials, I have the camera, the microphone, so yeah, you're stuck with just me today, so I hope we have a good podcast together. I'm not gonna do the topic that me and Liz were originally gonna do because we might still do it either next week or the week after. Today's topic is about addressing negative energy. I'm going to talk about why avoiding negative energy isn't always the best solution and how to address negative energy in a way that isn't dwelling or giving it too much energy or too much attention. Moving on, the self-care tip I'm going to give you today is keeping a log. I find that when I'm in a very negative mood, I get like this rain cloud above my head. It's like a fog. And if you were to ask me what I did a couple days ago, or even last week, I'd probably be really confused and be like, what? I don't know. Everything is like the same. It's like a blur. And so one of the best ways I found to combat that is to start keeping a log of certain things that I was having a hard time remembering. And there's a lot of ways to track and log things that you're doing. Obviously, the most common way is on a piece of paper. You can either use like a calendar or like a grid sheet. And, every time you do something you want to do or don't want to do, you put a little check mark, or at one point I was actually putting stickers on my calendar because I liked how it made me feel. There's also, I heard from a book that there was this person who used a paperclip method, and basically his goal at work was to make 100 sales calls every day. So to help him keep track of this, he filled up a jar with paper clips, 100 paper clips, and then he had an empty jar right next to it. And every time he made a sales call, he took one paper clip and moved it to the other jar. And so he would watch the other jar become more empty and the other one become more full, and it was kind of just a visual way of seeing how many calls he had made that day. There's a lot of things you can log, it's just based on what your goals are and what you actually want to keep track of. I read in another book, it's called 168 Hours, and it's about time management. And one of the things she recommends right in the beginning is to keep an hourly log of exactly what you're doing. So obviously from sometime at night to sometime in the morning, you're going to be sleeping. But what do you do right when you wake up? Are you in bed for another hour? Are you looking through your phone? Or do you get up and brush your teeth and get ready? She wanted to have people keep track of what they're actually doing, because it turns out a lot of people overestimate the amount of work they're doing, and they underestimate the amount of time they're just kind of derping around, not really doing anything. So to have a visualization, kind of like your own data on what's actually happening during that time, can be really useful in saying you know what, I actually could free up an hour or two in my day, but I just have to do a little bit less watching TV or browsing your phone. So you could log your time, you could log your sleep, so you keep track of when you fall asleep and when you wake up, and you can correlate these logs with other logs. So imagine you were having a log for your mood, like a mood tracker. You could go to your time log and say, When I spend a lot of time doing this, my mood is higher. And when I spend a lot of time doing this, my mood is lower. Or the sleep log, when I spend 8 hours sleeping, then I tend to be more productive. When I sleep 10 hours, I tend to be happier. I don't know. Just like seeing how they all relate to each other would be very interesting. I keep a log of just like notes of what happened during days because, like I said, the fog that happens during a negative mood or negative time in my life, it's easy to just say like, oh, nothing has gone good this week or nothing has gone good this month. But when you look at like the notes that I've taken throughout the month, it's kind of like, well, yeah, actually I did have some times where things were okay. And it's kind of like, solid evidence against this, negative bias that I have. So I think logging things, keeping a log of things like you have goals for, or just keeping track of things, it can go a long ways against fighting that negative energy cloud that gets the best of us sometimes. So, usually around this time, me and Liz would move into our affirmations and breathing exercise. But I'm going to do something a little different because I feel like today's topic is going to be a little hard to jump into our affirmations without kind of getting other things out of the way first. I feel like maybe if you're in a bad mood right now, you might not be ready to take the affirmations in. So I'm going to do something a little different and save the affirmations for last. So it'll be like, we'll talk about our things that we want to talk about, and then I'll kind of send you off with some calm affirmations, and yeah, hopefully end the podcast on a positive note after talking about all of this negative energy stuff. So, with that said, let's go ahead and dive right into probably one of the hardest topics to talk about, which is negativity, negative energy, bad moods, trauma, all of it. So, let's just get it out of the way that negative energy isn't something we can avoid. It's natural because all of our emotions comes in cycles. It comes with good, it comes with bad. And whenever we go through something negative, it's always something we can learn from. Even if it's not something pleasant, there's always something we can take away and learn and grow from. So I can't compare my feelings to your feelings. Me and you don't feel sad in the same way. We don't feel angry in the same way. We don't feel scared. Something I'm afraid of could be something you're completely okay with, and something that makes you angry I can be completely okay with. So we can't really say to anyone that we truly understand what each other's going through because we don't experience the world in the same way. We're two different people, and that's totally okay. But the thing that we can connect on is that we both do feel sad, right? Like, we feel different degrees of sadness for different reasons. But we've both felt sad before. We've both felt anger. We've both felt fear, anxiety. We're all human and we all feel those emotions. I just wanted to preface with that because I'm going to pretty much spill all the tea on my experience with depression and how it's made me more aware of the effects of either giving negative energy a lot of attention or giving it no attention. So I'm not trying to say I know how you feel. I'm just sharing how I've felt negative energy and how I've dealt with it in the past. So I have an About Me video. It's about briefly talk about my experience with depression. I have experienced symptoms of depression since I was 8 years old. And that's kind of crazy to think that a child, an 8-year-old child, could experience depression. But I wasn't an 8-year-old who knew they were depressed. It was me looking back with the lens of an adult, the knowledge of an adult, and seeing, yeah, when I was 8 years old, I was exhibiting signs of depression. So I had no idea. I almost thought that it was just my personality that made me kind of reclusive and keeping to myself and just not being super happy all the time. I was just like, it's okay, I don't have to be happy like everybody else. Like, I have moments where I'm happy, but for the most part, I'm just I'm just not like other kids. So yeah, I had no idea that, me not being able to make eye contact with people, whether they were kids or adults, me like literally walking very slow and staring at the ground, almost like a cartoon of someone who's depressed. It was literally like that. I was slouching and I just had a closed off posture and energy. It's gone through ups and downs, times where it's just really bad or just barely tolerable, all the way up till now. I am still working on my depression. But I can definitely tell you that it's a lot better than how it was. I would say probably the worst of it was my late teens to like early 20s was probably like the worst parts of my depression. So my typical day as a child, a lot of people think that depression kind of just happens in a moment where you're not doing anything and maybe you're alone and you're just kind of left with your thoughts. But for me, depression starts as soon as I would wake up. I would wake up and I would feel dread. I would feel weight on myself as I struggled to get up. I'd feel fear and anxiety as I thought about what might happen that day. Because the way I sum it up is that I didn't grow up in a place that fostered love, and I didn't go anywhere that fostered love. And that might sound a little cruel to say, because I had a family that loved me. I know my parents loved me. I know my siblings loved me. But when I say that the environment didn't foster love, I mean that, my parents were pressed and going through their own trauma and working through it. And my siblings and we had to deal with parents that haven't resolved their own trauma and were dealing with it in very unhealthy ways. So, despite the fact that my parents and my siblings loved me, I didn't feel a genuine trust in their love, because one moment you have someone who says they love you and you're great and all the things a normal, healthy family would tell you, and then the next moment it was the complete opposite, saying that you're terrible and, just awful things. That would be coming from my parents, who, are supposed to love you and accept you for who you are. And yeah, they can have bad moments, but usually come out of it and say like, you know what, that wasn't right and I'm sorry, like to make up. But there was none of that. Like we got the bad abusive punishment and we just kind of were left with it. There was no apologies, no that was wrong of me to do, like nothing. And my siblings and I dealing with that, my siblings kind of, they used like bullying and fighting as their way of dealing with their issues. We all got the brunt of it. They all handled it in their own ways. I know I did not handle it very well. And you know, when I think about it, I just, all I remember is so many days just crying every day. It was hard because I would come home to a place where I sometimes was given love, but then more often it was negativity. So how could I really trust what was, you know, how can you trust the positive and good side when like the same people would hurt you emotionally? And it was hard because then you would go to school and with all this weight of the things that happen to you at home, and you know, it's hard to make connections and it's hard to focus. I remember I consistently had really bad grades in school. I didn't do any homework. I would do homework if the teacher gave us time in class to do it. But if they sent me home with homework, I was not in a mental state to be doing homework. Like with all the chaos and terrible energy in my household, homework was not gonna happen. Teachers would be on me like, what's going on? We know you're a smart kid. You do good on your tests, but you don't do your homework and you're getting like D's and F's. Like, I don't understand what's going on. And of course they were doing that out of concern, but for me it just felt like more people just like putting pressure on me and bullying me basically. And then because I didn't have a sense of love from my household, I didn't have a sense of love for myself, and it showed in every way possible. It showed in my personality, and it showed like in my appearance. It's kind of embarrassing to talk about, but I didn't brush my hair, and I didn't brush my teeth, and I would shower like sometimes only once a week. And yeah, I could see how other people would be off-put by me because I probably wasn't the most pleasant person to be around. And I developed habits of not looking people in the eye, and I wouldn't open my mouth very much when I talked. Even now, I still kind of do it when I meet people for the first time, because if you talk loudly, your teeth show, and I had disgusting teeth and bad breath, and I didn't want people to notice that right away. So I was just a miserable little child, and it only got worse and worse as I started to grow up, because you get your hormones mixed in with it, and you know, you're developing as a person, so you have more awareness. And as I grew more awareness, and I, you know, going through my teenage hormonal years, that was probably the worst of it. You know, I often thought about suicide and just escaping, running away. I went through like a month where I refused to speak at all. Like, I was just tired of communicating with people, so I just stopped talking. And yeah, I would say during that time I was probably giving the most attention to all my negative feelings. Not in a healthy way. It was more of a, like, being sad for the sake of being sad, or being angry just for the sake of being angry. There was nothing really healthy about it. Yeah, when you just sit there and just soak up your negative emotions, it's so damaging and toxic to your body. I've even heard that if it goes on long enough, it can actually cause brain damage. Depression is inflammation of the brain, and just like a wound, if it's inflamed long enough, it hurts and it just damages and destroys. So I don't know if I was capable of handling my trauma and negative emotions in a healthy way at that time. Like, there's no way, with it still going on and me just dwelling in the negative feelings, I didn't have the resources or the willpower to help myself at that time. So I just dreamed about escaping it, fight or flight. I wanted to flight as far as I could. I dreamed about moving to another country when I turned 18 because I really thought that would solve all my problems. I also had this bad habit of wanting to jump into a relationship and have my partner save me from my environment, because I didn't experience love with my family. I didn't experience love at school with friends. When you see TV shows and movies where people find love within a romantic partnership, that was it for me. I was like, oh, that's the key. That's where I can get love. So I was really counting on leaving my environment first and then finding a romantic partner to solve all my problems. And those were, one of them, getting out of the environment's pretty good, but relying on someone else for your happiness, ooh, not good. So after high school and after I was able to move out of my parents' house for the first time, that's probably when my focus shifted from giving my depression and negative energy too much attention and shifted it to not giving it enough attention. Because I thought as soon as I was out of there and as soon as I had a relationship with a romantic partner, then it wouldn't go away right away. I was aware of that. My depression wasn't just gonna go away magically, but I did think that time would heal it. And as I was further from my family and as I was in this loving relationship, that everything would fix itself. And to some extent it helped, but it's not enough. It has to come from within. So I lived my life just chugging along and just burying everything I felt and saying it's gonna be okay. These feelings are gone now, they're healed, I'm not going through it anymore, so obviously it has no power over me anymore. But the thing that happens when you bury your feelings and stuff them under is that they grow and they fester and they come out in other ways. So if you don't give your feelings a safe place where they can come out freely, then they come out when you don't think about them, or they come out in ways that aren't healthy, in ways that you don't want them to come out. Maybe you'll be having an argument with your friend and then you say something really nasty. That's unresolved trauma coming out in a way that you're not anticipating. Or you're doing something completely normal or day to day for everybody else, but someone looks at you the wrong way, or some sign or something that reminds you of it just takes you completely out of it and you just can't function anymore. That's ways that your unresolved trauma is going to get in the way of your life. It's going to keep popping up like a whack-a-mole almost, if you don't give it the space and the attention that it needs. It's a fine line. It's a very fine line. Negative feelings can be really dangerous when you don't give them attention, because it's like a wound. Someone told me recently that a person, maybe in war, in the army or something, they rarely ever die from a gunshot wound. It's the infection from the gunshot wound that kills them. And I think negative energy is really similar in trauma. Like, trauma doesn't kill people, but the infection from trauma, it can do a lot of harm. So if you don't tend to it like a wound and help it heal properly, it's going to infect you and infect your life. At the same time, on the flip side, giving it too much attention, and that's when I was talking about being sad for the sake of being sad, or being angry for the sake of being angry. That's called rumination, and it's actually addictive and it's toxic. And you'll see this with people who have anxiety or depressed. Like, I definitely went through a time in my life where something made me angry. I wanted to sit there and be angry about it. If I was anxious about something, I wanted to sit there and be anxious about it, because for some reason I thought that would make me feel better. And on one hand, it could make you feel better if you kind of let the emotion run its course. Because sometimes it really is okay to just be like, you know what? This made me angry and I have a right to be angry. Or this thing, it makes me feel sad, and it should make anyone feel sad. Feelings are there because of a reason. The feelings aren't there just to be there, if that makes any sense. So the real question is, like, where's the line, and what exactly is the way to deal with these emotions in a healthy way? And number one, I would say, if you can afford it, if it's available to you, therapists and doctors, they're experts, and they help a lot of people who deal with depression, anxiety, and other negative emotions. But I know some people who listen to the podcast don't have that option. I'm actually one of those people who I'm unemployed right now, so fitting in the expense of a therapist would be way too much for me. So for those people who wouldn't be able to afford a doctor or a therapist, I'm not an expert, but I can tell you what I've done to try to help. And don't reject your feelings. Don't ever say that you shouldn't feel the way you do. You don't have to be happy about the fact that you're feeling it. It's weird. You can feel it, but not be okay with the fact that you feel that way. But that is what's going to lead you into problem solving mode. So you really have to personally decide and say, you know what, I feel sad right now, but is it okay for me to feel sad? I'll give you an example. I read friendship between some people, like the friendship dynamic change. I found myself a little angry about that because I enjoyed their friendship, and now it's changed and they don't have as much time for, me and other people or whatever is going on. And I found myself angry. But after I allowed myself to be angry, I decided I don't want to be angry about it. I'm not entitled to anyone's time. It doesn't matter if they're my friend or my family or my romantic partner. I'm not entitled to anyone's time, and I'm not entitled to, a relationship with anybody. People have a right to do whatever makes them happy, and if that doesn't involve me, then I should just be happy for them, and that's it. I should just be happy for them. If I have to let it go, and maybe they'll come back, but putting negative energy into change isn't going to help me. It's not going to make them change their behavior. It's only really going to affect me, because the friends are going to do what they want to do, and they're going to do what makes them happy and make what's best for them. One, I should be happy about that. I should embrace that and be like, yes, you're my friend and I want what's best for you. And if that means you have to take some time that doesn't include me in there, that's totally okay. That's what I mean by letting yourself feel what you feel, but then deciding if you're okay if you feel that way. So I came to the conclusion that I wasn't okay with the fact that I was angry about it. I can see why I was angry. Abrupt changes just don't feel good. But I didn't have to be angry about it. The way I see it, you should approach your negative energy kind of like a car accident. You have to approach it in like a problem-solving way, in a way that kind of like steps back and away from what's happening. You can't be right in there and see everything for what it is. You know, when you're in the car and you just got in an accident, you have to get out of the car to look around and assess what happened. You look at the damage, so like, where did you get hurt? How did this affect you? Were some of your needs not met or not considered? You know, what part of you got hurt? So that's you getting out of the car and looking at the damage. And then the tricky part is deciding who's at fault. You know, if you're at a car accident, you're like, okay, well, you didn't use your blinker, and so I kept going forward, and then you crashed into me, so it's kind of your fault for not using your blinker. This can easily devolve into pointing out blame, which I don't think is the same thing. Blaming people, blaming yourself is not really healthy. Figuring out who's at fault with an objective, factual lens, seeing it for what it is, that's what I'm trying to say. Sometimes it could be your fault, and that's also okay to acknowledge. It's actually very healthy to acknowledge when things are your fault, because then you can grow from it and learn, okay, is this the kind of person I want to be? Is this the kind of actions I want to do? Is this, you know? And you can decide for yourself if that's how you want to proceed in the future. But sometimes it does take looking at and being like, yeah, you know, like, I should have been more careful. So it's a very fine line. Like, don't blame yourself. Don't beat yourself up for something that isn't your fault. But also don't deflect it when it might be your fault. Think it's completely okay sometimes to tell yourself that this had nothing to do with you and you're completely not at fault. When I think about how I was depressed when I was a child, and I think about the like emotional abuse and things people said to me, I am 100% willing to say that was not my fault. I was a child. I was still growing up and learning. What on earth could I have done to deserve what I got? And the answer is nothing. There's absolutely no reason. There's no reason I should have went through what I went through. There's no reason why, you know, I should have been the target or victim of someone else's unresolved trauma. And when it comes to like abuse and violence and all kinds of other things, it's okay to say it wasn't your fault. Because sometimes there's no reason for things to happen. Sometimes you look for it. Why did this happen? And there's just no why. And that's fine. You know, everyone wants to feel justified that, you know, they're angry or they did something. Because that's, you know, what their mood made them do. But at the end of the day, everything's your choice, and you can decide, you know what, that I made that choice and it was a bad call. It's really hard to accept when things are your fault, and it's really hard to accept when you did something wrong. It's one of the hardest things, I think. Negative feelings, that kind of leads into assessing the situation, assessing the damage, assessing what happened, and then moving forward and being like, okay, this is what we're gonna do from now on. These are the changes I'm going to make or not make. This is how I'm gonna protect myself from this happening in the future. I think dealing with negative energy in a healthy way, the only way to do it is to give yourself a space, give yourself time where you can let out all these feelings and not like potentially harm a relationship that's really valuable to you, or not harm yourself. So you might need a therapist to be there with you to guide you through the feelings. You might need a friend who is willing to give you a hug or let you cry on their shoulder, or you might choose to be completely alone and deal with these feelings. And all of those are healthy. So with that in mind, I think we can our affirmations now and this on a little bit better note than the rest of it has been. So the affirmations I picked out today are: today is a new start, and I deserve as many chances as I need to take. I think that's important because you don't need to wait until Monday to start a new bit or a new goal. You don't need to wait until January 1st. You can do it today. If it's important enough to do on Monday, if it's important enough to do starting January 1st, why isn't it important enough to start today? So that's why this one really resonates with me. Today's a new start, and I deserve as many chances as I need to take. That second part is also really important because you have to be prepared for how you're gonna handle yourself if you fail. A lot of people set up grand plans to do this new thing, but they don't think about what they're gonna do on those days they don't feel like doing it. On those days that they're just tired. And then when that day comes, they're kind of thrown off guard, and then they think, well, I guess I failed. I kind of used to do that when it came to exercising, and just recently, maybe like a week ago, I said, you know what? I'm gonna go to the park, the local outdoor park, every day, and I'm just gonna play it by ear. If I don't, my goal was to do some body weight exercises and run. If I don't feel like running, I'm gonna walk. But either way, I'm gonna show up every day because it's important to me. And that's why it's important to have a plan of what you're gonna do if you're feeling tired or just not up to it. I made the plan that I was going to just do a nice brisk walk around the park if I didn't feel like running. And it's been great because I still show up every day and I set the intentions. The next one is: I am in full control of my life. Sometimes things happen to you, but you have control of how you react to them and what you do. So that's very important. The next affirmation is: I am becoming a better person each day. That's true even when you're not doing something actively towards your goals. You're always learning. Your experience is experience. So even when you're experiencing bad days, that's just going to serve as a reference later when you look back okay, this is how I act on bad days. How can I deal with it moving forward? You are becoming a better person each day, even when you're having a bad day. It's important to acknowledge that. And the last one is: I trust that everything in my life is unfolding perfectly. It's not healthy to think that your life's spiraling down. It's not healthy to think that things are just going wrong. Life is happening exactly how it's supposed to happen. And like I said, with having control of your life, you know, you have the control to do whatever you need to do. So please feel free to join me right now as we take a deep breath in. I'll say the affirmation out loud. Just take it in your mind and then breathe out as you let it kind of settle in your mind. Okay, let's begin. Take a deep breath in. Today is a new start. I deserve as many chances as I need to take. Breathe out. Breathe in. I am in full control of my life. Breathe out. Breathe in. I am becoming a better person each day. And breathe out. Breathe in. I trust that everything in my life is unfolding perfectly. And breathe out. Alright, that's it for today. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to hang out with me. If you're ever in need of someone to talk to, me and Liz are always open to hearing what you guys have to say. I'm always open to having my mind changed and looking at things from a new perspective. So please always feel free to drop us a line and let us know what you think. And also a happy Thanksgiving. We'll be back either this next Monday or the Monday after. So bye guys. Have a good holiday.